One of the first videos I did on this channel was about what happened to Brandon Jennings, and in that video I talked a lot about him and how amazing of a high school player he was and how he was supposed to be the next Allen Iverson or whatever, but he's not the first person who comes to mind when I think of high school basketball. In my personal opinion, the greatest high school basketball player that I've ever seen to this day was Austin Rivers. That man was just different. I watched every mixtape that came out about him. Dude was a basketball rock star. I remember watching him growing up and just thinking like, damn, this dude's gonna be him. Like, he's gonna be the best player in the NBA. Like, he was that type of special. I remember this one game when he went up against John Wall as a junior in high school, and Wall was already an NBA player. Like, he was just second in Rookie of the Year behind Blake Griffin. Would have won Rookie of the Year had Blake Griffin not been there. And he was also the #1 pick, and also was giving him the works. Like, his handle, his footwork, his body control, his jump shot, they were just hella polished. He straight up looked like a pro as a high school basketball player. And to add to that, he was hella cocky. Like, dude had the Mamba mentality. He didn't like losing. He played aggressive and he never backed down. And if I was to compare him back then to anybody, he would be a mix of D Wade and Kobe Bryant, because bro was HIM in high school. But when he got to the NBA, he became just a guy. And in the beginning of his career, he was about to be just a guy out of the league. His rise and fall was probably one of the wildest things I've ever seen, because I couldn't have predicted it. So when looking back at Austin Rivers' career, you gotta wonder, where did it all go wrong and what happened to the NBA's next superstar? Well, I'm going to try and answer that in this video today, so make sure to like and subscribe, as all support is much appreciated. And with that all the way, let's get into the video. This is what happened to Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers was born on August 1st, 1992 to parents Kristen and Doc Rivers. As I mentioned earlier, his dad is a former all-star NBA point guard who in his playing days was mostly known for his time with the Atlanta Hawks, where he was a double-double machine. Now, Doc wasn't no slouch as an NBA player, but his career really took off when he got into coaching, as he is one of the most polarizing NBA coaches of all time for a multitude of reasons. Growing up being the son of an NBA player can be tough, as many expect you to follow in your dad's footsteps, and for those who do go the basketball route, the expectations are unreal, as everything you do is minimized by the fact that you're the son of an NBA player. Austin said it himself that growing up playing AAU and stuff, he got a lot of hate because of who his dad was. And even though he didn't do anything for those people to hate on him, he knew that it was going to be his reality, because when people acknowledged him, it was as Doc's son, not as Austin. So to change that narrative, he got hungry and developed that chip on his shoulder, that same chip that the kids who are trying to get their family out the projects have. Austin had it in him, even though he grew up privileged and didn't have to worry about some of the things that many of the people he shared the court with had to worry about. His mindset was like he was a predator, not prey. The mindset, along with the countless hours spent in the gym, really paid off. And by the time Austin Rivers reached high school, he was already on scouts' radars, and it wasn't just because his dad was Doc, as Doc was in Boston during most of this time, and Austin was all the way out there in Florida. For his high school career, he would attend Winter Park High School in Winter Park, Florida. As a freshman, he would average about 14 points, which was good for second on the team in scoring, 4 rebounds and 2 assists per game. His team would go 28-2 and make it all the way to the regional quarterly finals, where they would face off with Winter Springs High School, and unfortunately Austin and Winter Park would get blown out 83-64, but Austin had a good game as he led the team in scoring with 22 points. After an impressive freshman season, Austin received a few offers and actually ended up committing to Florida. The summer after his freshman season was a big one for Austin, as he was constantly playing in different leagues and for different teams. He played so much ball and worked on his game so much that he was only able to attend one game of the NBA Finals his dad was coaching in, which was Game 6, where the Celtics closed out the Lakers to win the 2008 NBA championship. Austin celebrated briefly but had to dip, as he had his own AAU game to worry about. Heading into his sophomore year, the target on his back grew larger, as he was a very highly ranked recruit in his class, and everybody who played him came in and gave it everything they had because they wanted to see if the hype surrounding Doc's son was deserved. And Austin knew what time it was every time he stepped on the court and did what he was supposed to do, which was ball, as he averaged 24 points and 4 rebounds a night, leading his team to a record of 24-8. He will also have his "let me introduce myself" moment during the City of Palms Classic tournament, where in the game to decide third place in the tournament, Austin will put up 46 points to beat out Wheeler. That performance earned him tournament MVP. He would then go on to help his team win both district and regionals before losing to Olympia in the state Final Four game. This was heartbreaking to Austin, who made it his mission to come back better than ever and finally get that state championship that he's been chasing since the start of his high school career. So that summer, he got back in the lab and continued to make a name for himself, to the point that many people were wondering if he was already a top guard in the nation over upperclassmen such as Kyrie Irving, Brandon Knight, and Josh Shelby, with Tom Krzyzewski saying he would take him over any recruit in the nation as a sophomore heading into his junior season. Now, during his junior season, he averaged 24 points and 4 rebounds a night, again leading his team to a record of 29-6. Now, while his per game numbers didn't change much, he still had become a much more complete player, as he really improved his defense, which had become a point of focus for him after some one-on-one games with Paul Pierce, where in many of those games he was up, but when it came down to the wire, he would lose because he couldn't get any stops, which really frustrated him and made him want to improve on that end of the floor. And that desire to improve on that end of the floor was really showing itself during his junior season. He also had another amazing performance in the City of Palms Classic Tournament, where he dropped 45 points on St. Benedict and won the MVP again. But the best moment of the season will happen when Austin Rivers finally did what he set out to do, which was win a state championship. And he did this by leading Winter Park to victory over Dr. Phillips 76-57. Austin had 23 points in that game. After winning his first state championship, he would go on to play for Team USA under 18 team. He ended up helping Team USA win gold and even set a Team USA record for an under 18 event with 35 points against Canada. He was then named to the 5th annual Boost Mobile Elite 24 game, where he was named co-MVP after he had 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. That fall, he would decide to reopen his commitment after visiting some schools and see another top-ranked guard in the nation in Kyrie Irving go to Duke. Also decided that he would also attend Duke, officially signed with the program on November 16, 2010. Also would then go on to have the best season of his high school career during his senior season. He averaged 29 points and 6 rebounds per game, leading his team to a record of 28-6. He would then help his team repeat at state championships, dropping 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 steals in the win over Dr. Phillips. Austin was seen as a consensus top 3 prospect, and many ranking sites did have him as the top prospect, even over Anthony Davis. Austin was named a McDonald's All-American, Florida's Mr. Basketball, and Naismith Prep Player of the Year, ending off one hell of a high school career. Now, the expectations for Austin at the college level were really high, as he was expected to fill in the hole left by Kyrie Irving, who was drafted number 1 overall in the 2011 draft. Now, Kyrie only got to play 18 games with Duke, so the hope was that Austin, who many believe was just as talented, if not more talented than Irving, would be able to lead Duke to a lot more success as long as he could stay healthy. Many preseason rankings had Duke somewhere in the top 7, mostly in that 4 to 7 range, as there were a lot of returning freshmen who probably could have been top picks but chose to stay an extra year due to the lockout situation in the NBA, which meant a lot of college teams got to keep some of their stars for an extra season, meaning this was going to be a tough season for college ball. Per usual though, Austin was confident in his ability and believed that he could lead Duke to a championship. He would get his first taste of what college ball was like during his exhibition games in China and Dubai. In his 3 games against China's national team, he won all 3 games and averaged about 14 points per game, but shot poorly in all 3 games. His only real saving grace was some nice dunks he pulled off, but that's about it. His best performance on that international tour would actually come against Dubai's national team, where he scored 16 points, including 10 in the second quarter, and actually started to look more like the player he was in high school. He made his actual college debut against Belmont, where the Blue Devils just barely squeaked out a victory, and Austin definitely didn't have his best game. He scored 16 points, which was the team high that he shared with Seth Curry, but he also had 5 turnovers to only 1 assist, and he shot 3 for 9 from the field. He would bounce back though in his second game against Presbyterian, where he dropped 15 points and 6 assists in a game where Duke won by 40. His first 2 college games will pretty much speak to how his season went overall, as he was very up and down. One game he will show you why he was one of the best prospects coming out of high school, and another he will have you wondering why he was a starter. Like, his counting stats would be pretty decent every game, but if you watch the game, you will be like, what's going on? This ain't the Austin Rivers I knew in high school. Overall, though, he had a good season, averaging 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists a night on decent efficiency. He had the best game of the season in a game against UNC at UNC, where he dropped 29 points and hit the game winner to end UNC's 31 home game winning streak they had against Duke. Unfortunately, though, that would be the high of his season, as Duke's season would end in the round of 64 against the 15-seeded Lehigh. Also, we're going to be named first team All-ACC and ACC Rookie of the Year after 1 season at Duke. Austin would declare for the NBA draft, where many mock drafts had him as the 2nd or 3rd guard off the board. He was drafted 10th overall to the New Orleans Hornets, to team up with fellow rookie big man and #1 pick Anthony Davis. After being drafted by New Orleans and signing his rookie scale contract, Austin would undergo surgery to clean up bone spurs in his right ankle so that he could be at his best for the start of the season. On October 31st, 2012, Austin Rivers made his NBA debut in a game against the San Antonio Spurs. This game was a pretty big game, probably one of the few New Orleans games that was a must-watch for me, as you have the #1 pick in AD, who many were saying is the next Tim Duncan mixed with Kevin Garnett, and yet to me, he wasn't even the draw of the game because I really wanted to see Austin, as I was hoping that he would recapture some of that magic he had in his high school days, now that he was in the NBA with a faster pace and more freedom. But unfortunately, he actually looked really bad and just out of place. He ended the game with 7 points on terrible efficiency and had more turnovers than assists, which honestly had become the norm for him even in college, as his playmaking was very underwhelming, which is something that I ignored because I thought his scoring would be so good and his shot creation would be so elite that it would create easy opportunities for him to make plays for others and get like 4 to 5 assists a night, but it just wasn't the case. Austin would really struggle throughout his rookie season, which is common for rookies, especially rookie guards, but the hope was that he would see improvement as time went on, especially considering he got minutes and was a starter to start the season, but again, he didn't. He was a black hole on offense, and every time he touched the ball, you knew he was going to dribble and try to create something out of nothing, when in reality, he probably should have made that extra pass and moved the ball around and got an easier shot. As in the NBA, Austin wasn't athletic enough to create the space that he was able to create in college and in high school, which was something he seemed to be unable to grasp, as the NBA defenders were too big, too strong, and too fast. So way too often he was getting stuck on his dribble drives and crossovers, as they weren't getting him the same space he was used to, so he will end up turning the ball over or taking a really bad shot. His performance on the court cost his starting job on many occasions, as he would start for stretches of games and then get benched for stretches of games, as Coach Monty Williams was experimenting with different lineups trying to get the best result out of his team. Overall, his rookie season by all accounts was extremely disappointing. He played 61 games and averaged 6 points, 2 assists, and 1 rebound per game on some of the worst shooting numbers I've ever seen, and the advanced numbers were not too kind to him either, as he had the worst PER in the NBA and his turnover rate was comparable to those of centers. And don't even get me started on his defense, like he really had no bright spots. He started the season off rough and ended it rough. His only saving grace is that he was young and that you knew how good he was in high school, so you hoped that he would work on his game over the summer and have a breakout sophomore season. Well, his second year in the league was better than his first, but he was still awful, like really bad. The things he struggled with in his first year, he continued to struggle with. He couldn't create separation, and his shot selection continued to be awful. He would end his sophomore campaign averaging slightly under 8 points per game and 2 assists a night, and yet again, he wasn't even giving you anything on the other end, which was probably breaking New Orleans' heart, because they could have had something special if he was anything like he was in high school, because at this point, AD had broken out, and he was killing it in his second year, putting up 20 and 10 a night, and that summer, the team added some talent in Drew Holiday, Tyreke Evans, and Ryan Anderson, so they were attempting to build something in New Orleans, but it just didn't work out. Now, even with Austin's terrible first 2 years, the team still picked up his option, meaning they had his rights for another 2 years. He would come back to the team for his third year and play another 35 games before the team decided that it wasn't going to work and that his level of play wasn't adequate, so they decided to trade him. And of all teams that would trade for him, it had to be the team that his dad was the GM of, which, if you're an NBA player, is not a good look. Like, it just reeks of nepotism. On top of that, it's probably pretty hard to connect with your teammates when everybody sees you as the coach's / GM's son, because that was what Austin was. On top of that, a lot of fans were clowning him and saying he's only in the league because of his dad, which has to hurt, because as a basketball player, you want to be acknowledged for all the work you put in and not for who you are associated with. And for a minute, Austin's play separated him from his dad. And now all the years of hard work were erased overnight because he's now playing for his dad after he failed to live up to expectations in New Orleans. Now, with that being said, the move did help his play, as he did improve marginally after the trade, and he ended his season averaging about 7 points and 2 assists a game, but that's not good enough, and he was obviously seen as a bust, and TYT Sports named him the worst player in the league. Now, the 2016 season was a make or break year for Austin, as it was his last year on his rookie deal, and even though his dad was the GM, Austin was going to have to perform so his dad could justify re-signing him, but lucky for Austin, he had the perfect guy on his team to teach him how to be an NBA player, and that was the point guard himself, Chris Paul, who always turns his backups into legit ball players. Just go ask Darren Collison, Eric Bledsoe, and even Campaign most recently, all of whom became better players after playing behind Chris Paul. Now, Austin didn't have a crazy breakout season or anything, but he did have his best season as a pro by far. He averaged 9 points per game and shot the ball much more efficiently, shooting about 44% from the field and 34% from three. He also improved on defense as he was starting to grow into his body. After showing improvement, he would re-sign with the Clippers on a 3-year, $35 million deal, which did draw some questions as to up to this point he had only had one decent but not great season. Yet he received a contract comparable to his teammate Jamal Crawford, who was a Six-Man of the Year guy, who brought up the question if he actually deserved the deal. Well, after signing that deal, he had an even better season, averaging 12 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds a night, making him a constant in rotation. But the best part about his performance was that he did all of this while having the best shooting splits of his career, shooting around 44% from the field and 37% from three. Unfortunately, he strained his hamstring, which caused him to miss the end of the season, as well as most of the Clippers' first-round series against the Utah Jazz, where the Clippers lost in 7. After Austin's career year, some tension started to form in the locker room, most notably between his father Doc Rivers and Chris Paul. Rumor has it that Chris Paul and a few other teammates had problems with the perceived preferential treatment that Austin received for being the coach's son, as well as Chris believing that Doc cared more about making his son look good than actually making the team better. As the rumors circulated that the Clippers could have had Carmelo Anthony, but the trade ended up falling through because Doc was unwilling to include his son in the deal. Now, Austin is human and a man, so when you constantly hear your name in other people's mouth, you gotta respond, especially when people are calling to question if you deserve to be where you are, which is something Austin has been dealing with his whole life. And enough just became enough, as he tweeted out calling the claims about him being the reason for Chris Paul's frustration, saying that's BS, and then going on Undisputed to refute the claims made by Big Baby Davis, saying that Davis' comments were invalid because most of the time he couldn't even stay in shape or remember the plays, which led to Big Baby calling Rivers a bum and that his career was invalid, as the only reason he got a second contract was because of his daddy. Things continue to stay tense as there were a lot of reporting about the locker room situation, with a lot of blame being placed on the relationship between Doc and Austin. Eventually, Chris Paul wanted out and he would get his wish, being traded to the Rockets for a deal that included Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell. After the trade, Austin would earn a spot among the starters, which would lead to the best year of his career as he averaged a career-high 15 points and 4 assists, but the Clippers will miss the playoffs. In the offseason, the Clippers decided to move on from Austin, trading him to the Washington Wizards for Marcin Gortat. Unfortunately, he was unable to build on his career year and would actually regress as his style of play didn't fit in with the Washington system. He went back to averaging around 8 points and shot the ball poorly, which led to Washington trading him to Phoenix, where he was waived. After being waived by Phoenix, he was signed with Houston and stayed with the team for about a year and a half as a solid, scrappy veteran guard, even having a huge performance in the bubble, dropping 41 points, which was a career high, in a win against the Sacramento Kings. After a brief tenure with the Rockets, he signed a deal to join the New York Knicks, where he will only spend 21 games with the team before being traded to the Thunder and then waived before ever appearing in a game. At this point, his career looked over as he wasn't picked up by another team until the Nuggets gave him a chance, offering him a 10-day contract following the Jamal Murray injury. He performed well enough as a serviceable rotation piece and ended up signing with the team for the rest of the season and then re-signing with the team in the offseason on a 1-year deal. During his 1 year in Denver, he averaged about 6 points on okay efficiency, but was mostly a solid veteran presence on a team that was devastated by injuries. Denver decided not to re-sign him in the offseason and instead brought in KCP and Bruce Brown to fill in the rotation, so Austin would sign a 1-year deal to play for the Timberwolves in the most recent NBA season. For the Wolves, he averaged about 5 points a night, but his most memorable moment with the Wolves will happen on February 3rd in the game against the Orlando Magic, where Austin had an altercation with Magic big man Mo Bamba. Both players were injected and both players shared their thoughts on the situation and even exchanged words through Twitter. Austin's season will come to an end in the first round against the Denver Nuggets, and he is currently a free agent. So that's pretty much where we're at with Austin's career. Austin really didn't live up to the expectation that many people had set for him, and many people would call him a bust, and I can't sit here and lie and say that there's no validity to those claims. Austin did not perform up to the level of hype that surrounded him during his high school and college days, but that was because the hype that was built for him was kind of artificial. See, we live in this, day and age where we get to see all the highlights, but we don't get to see the lowlights. We're not watching these players consistently during their high school years. We're only seeing the best of their game. We're not seeing the worst parts. And Austin had a lot of maturing to do, and it took him a while to do that. And Austin even talked about the impacts of highlight culture and how he felt it impacted his career, as it fed him this belief that he was a star, so he played like a star. He was selfish and many times looked like he was playing for his stats instead of playing to win. And in all honesty, I wish someone would have pulled him to the side and really drilled into his head to be more of a team player, because the skill was there. He had the shot, and if he wanted to, he knew how to pass the ball. It's just that he preferred to go one-on-one with his opponents and be the offense instead of playing within an offense. And when he learned to play within an offense, he had his best and most efficient years and has become a solid veteran presence that could be a leader in the locker room, which deserves respect, because it's not easy to go from being a star to being just another guy. And many high-level basketball players fail at making that transition, especially ones as highly recruited and as popular as Austin was. So even though he might be seen as a bust based on expectations, overall his career has been a success. And though he probably will be remembered more for being Doc's son than his actual playing career, I'll always remember him as a high school phenom and one of the funniest, most entertaining basketball players I've ever witnessed. And I can't wait to see what he does for his career. I hope somebody takes a chance on him. I think he deserves to be an NBA player. I always enjoy watching Austin because he got game. Well, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed the video and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe and share the video with friends and family. And with that being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.